Hi, I'm Tracy Woods Blevins with the Master Gardener Association of the Central Rappahannock area. And today I'm going to be talking to you about decoding seed packets. So, our annual seed swap this year for 2021 has been pushed back to March 20th, and it's going to be outside at the King George Citizen Center from 10 to 1. So, we hope you'll come out and join us for our seed swap this year. I gave a longer presentation on decoding seed packets last year. So I'm just going to kind of give a brief overview of some of the terminology on seed packets. And also if you pick up some seeds that don't have all the information so that you kind of know what you need to get started with your seed starting. I'm making this video in March, right before our seed swap this year. And it's about 8 weeks before our frost here for me in Virginia, where I live in Spotsylvania. So that is a big weekend for me to start a lot of seeds, because a lot of seeds fall under that category of 8 weeks before frost to start indoors. So I'm going to talk with you about some of the terms on seed packets so you understand them and know what you kind of need to get started with when you go to start your seeds, okay? So some things on your seed packets that you're going to see are terms like open pollinated or hybrid. So I just want to quickly explain the difference. It's really just two different methods of how those seeds were made. Open pollinated is basically how nature makes seeds. So it's when plant species or certain heirloom varieties can be self-pollinated or open pollinated, okay? And that is how the seed gets created. So it's how, wildflowers are made in nature, okay? Hybrid seeds happen to be a selective process. So there is parent A, parent B, they get crossed. That creates a plant that makes the hybrid seed that you come to grow in your garden. Hybrids have a benefit of having very selective quality traits that you want and are bred to have sometimes more disease resistance a lot of times, or a higher yield or things like that. So both are good, but that's just the difference in an open pollinated or a hybrid if you see that on your seed packets. Annual perennial. Annual seed packets are for those flowers that have just one life cycle. So they're going to come and sprout, and you're going to grow them 1 year, and then they're going to end their cycle, and that's an annual. They will not come back from the roots, okay? Perennial seeds and perennials come back year after year. So that's the difference between annual and perennial. Typically, your annual seeds that you pick up have a shorter period to start them, usually 7 to 14 days. Is when you're going to see the germination process. A lot of times with perennial seeds, it takes a little bit longer germination process and a few more triggers, but I'll talk about that more later. Year packed date, especially when you're getting or picking up commercially packaged seeds, they do have a year pack date on there. So they have to be able to tell you when the seed was packed so that it is sold for that year, okay? In general, and this is a big generalization I'm going to make here, seeds that are older than 4 years are going to be declining in their germination. So what is germination? Germination is the process of a seed going to a seedling. That's all it is. So when you hear terms or see terms about germination on seed packets, that's what it's talking about. It's the process from seed to seedling. And germination rate relates to your year packed date. So germination rate also has to be on your commercially packaged seeds. And that tells you it's usually 90% or higher. So 90% of those seeds are going to sprout. That's what they're telling you. That's the success rate of starting those seeds under the optimum conditions, okay? That will go down the older the seeds. So if you go to a seed swap and people have brought some commercially packaged seeds that they're donating, look at the year packed and know that also what the germination rate is on there, that it's going to go down. So you're going to have fewer seeds. I will put a link in the about video. I'm not going to go into detail about it, but there is a germination test, a very simple germination test that you can do if you bring home seed from a seed swap. Use of wet, warm, moist paper towel, put it on your refrigerator, sprinkle some seeds on there. And it's sort of your own little test to see, is the seed packet going to be viable before you sprinkle them all out on a seed tray and hope they're going to come up. So you can just take a small sample, do that quick little test and see if they're going to germinate. Before last frost date and after frost date, you will see that a lot on your seeds packets. It will say start indoors before frost, or it will say start outdoors before frost, or outdoors after frost. So it's very important that you find out locally what your frost date is in the spring. What is it's called your last frost date, really, of the year, because your first one is going to be in the fall. That's usually the killing frost. And then your last one is going to be in the spring. So in Virginia, there is a resource on the Virginia Cooperative Extension website called the Home Vegetable Garden Planting Guide. And it shows by state the different areas and regions where your frost dates, your first and last frost dates are. And then that helps you plan back by those weeks when you're going to start your seed. So that's why it's important to know your frost dates in your area, because if your frost date is a certain time and you start your seeds way, way, way early, then you have to figure out how to keep those seedlings alive until you can get them transplanted outside, okay? Or sometimes if you're way, way, way late, you'll know how you may want to wait and start them maybe later in the fall again, or next year or something like that. So germination, again, the process of seed to seedling. Something that's really important to look for on all your seed packets are certain little triggers or key words or hints, I like to call them, that help you understand what's going to help those seeds begin that germination process. And there's a lot of little triggers and hints to look for in your seed packets. Some of them is light. It'll say it does need light. Or sow lightly. That tends to be really tiny seeds that you need to sow on top of your medium, and they need light to germinate. Some actually will say needs darkness, that you have to cover them for a period of time, and then they will germinate. So light is a trigger for germination. Moisture, very often, is a trigger for germination. The combination of light, moisture of your soil medium or your seed starting mix medium, and also temperature of your seed starting mix. So you will see heat mats available. Another generalization is a lot of seeds like to start around a 75, 78 degree temperature. Now, I'm not talking ambient air temperature. I'm talking what you're getting your soil outside to or your seed starting mix to. All right. Now, there are seeds, you have to read the package, and it will say sometimes on there, and give you hints about cool germination or warm germination. Okay. So look for those hints in there. And if it says warm, it might be that you need a heat mat or something like that to help with that germination. Don't go overboard with that, because you can get your seed starting mix too warm, and then that actually decreases the germination rate. Okay, so know what type of temperatures that seed likes to help the trigger of it starting to germinate. All right, so that's a few things to look for. I think I did already talk about sowing outdoors and direct sowing, but I'll explain what that means. Direct sowing means you're actually some seeds do not transplant well. So if you start them inside and they sprout and they make the roots, and then you take them from that little packet outside, you might not have a great success rate, because there are just some plants that tend to not want to be started that way. So if you're reading on your seed packets, and sometimes they will say direct sow, okay? Sometimes it'll say sow indoors, how many weeks before frost. And that's to get your plants to a bigger, healthier jump start before you take them outside and transplant them. But it may give you the option that, hey, you can also direct sow these. So that's the difference. And it's going to have a timing difference on there. So just read the packet and see what it's recommending. And sometimes it'll say recommended direct sow or recommended indoors, or it may give you just one or the other. So pay attention to that. A couple of other triggers or hint words that you might see, it'll say to soak your seeds, okay? Or it'll say something about nicking or scratching your seeds. So what we're talking about are processes that are either scarification, where you're scratching that seed coat, or what is the other one? Scarification or stratification, where seeds need to go through a warm, cold period. Okay, so those are kind of scarification and stratification are terms that you'll see things on your seed packets that say soak your seeds, or you'll say chill your seeds first. And what you're trying to do is present those things that would happen and occur with those seeds in nature to help them trigger. And a lot of times it has to do with weakening that seed coat is what you're doing. You're helping weaken that seed coat so that when you add in these other triggers such as light, moisture, temperature, the seed can break that dormancy and go into the germination process. Okay. So I think that goes over pretty much a lot of the little triggers you're going to see on your seed packets. A couple of things I'm just going to read from some of these here. Days to germination. What that means is how long will it take that seed to go through that process of a seed to seedling. So it can vary. Again, annuals tend to be shorter process and perennials tend to be a little bit longer. So look and count the days to germination when you're starting your seed. Planting depth, it'll say a 1/4 inch or an 1/8 inch is pretty common. Sometimes it'll just say sow lightly, and you're just sprinkling them on top, spritzing some water on top, because those are the ones that actually need that a lot of light to germinate. Whereas the other ones that you're planting them at a 1/4 or an 1/8 inch, you know, they need to be planted into the soil for their germination to trigger. Days to harvest. That is something you will see, and sometimes it will be specific about from transplant or from seed. And that is with your vegetables. So that's how many days from when you put that plant in the garden usually, and read your seed packets because it might say from transplant or from seed, or it might have both, that you will get that fruit. So this is one of the things where it's important, again, to know your growing season in terms of days. So if your growing season is 110 days, for example, and you're picking up a seed packet that says 120 days, you're either going to have to figure out, okay, I got to start this inside so I can give it extra time. Or you might say, you know, I'm going to choose another one that days to germination is much less than my growing season days. So that's something important to look at on your seed packets. And I think sometimes they'll even give you information for outside, such as row spacing of your plants and things like that. So if you pick up seeds from a seed swap, some of the things you want to make sure that are on there as well, which are pretty standard on the commercially packaged ones, is know if it's, you do want to pick up ones that have a common name and preferably also a botanic name with them, okay? It's helpful if people have put on the sun preference. Is it full sun or part sun? Okay. It's also helpful to know an average size of a plant. That's usually always available on the commercially packaged seeds. You want to look for, and if you're taking seeds to a seed swap, to put that on there. Okay. So common name, preferably botanic name. Not always if you're talking about vegetables or well-known annuals like sunflowers and tomatoes. But other plants or seeds that you might see at a seed swap, you might want to make sure you also have the botanic name on there so you know which firecracker plant is it that you're starting, right? The sun preference, the size of the plant, and then other helpful growing information to people who you might be passing these seeds on to, such as the soil that it prefers or quality characteristics, like the color, or is it fragrant, or something like that about the seeds. So I hope this gives you some helpful information on how to look at your seed packets and learn some of those hints that they're providing for you on there, and learn some of the information that you want to make sure you gather up before you go to start your seeds. And one last tip that I have for you, the way I like to do it when I'm starting seeds is usually in January, I go through all the seeds that I have, and I've usually already started buying seed, and I sort them out by which ones do I absolutely want to start this year. So I put together all the ones that I know I want to start, push the other ones aside that I'm not sure, or maybe I'll take to a seed swap or something. Or maybe they've aged out in terms of the year pack date or whatever. And then I sort them by how many weeks out from my frost date. So what I do is, like, I put mine together in a bag like this, and I write 8 weeks. And then I write all the different types of plant seeds that I'm going to start at that 8-week mark. And I do that from starting at 12 weeks, 10 weeks, 8, 6, 4, 2 weeks before frost and then after frost. So that's how I sort out all my seeds. So I know what I'm starting on what weekend in terms of the seeds that I'm starting. So that's a way I like to sort my seeds out and get prepared for the seed starting season. So I hope that you will join us at our annual seed swap this year for 2021. It's going to be March 20th at the Kings George Citizen Center. It's going to be outside and it's going to be from 10 to 1. Other years, just check our website. It's the Master Gardener Association of the Central Rappahannock area. We typically do it on National Seed Swap Day, which is the last Saturday in January. But if you're watching in 2021, it's going to be March 20th. So we hope to see you at that seed swap. Thank you.